country where you are free to practice whatever belief you want. Even here in Honduras, we came here to do missions, but we're welcomed here. Even if people don't believe the same thing, they welcome us, they want to get to know us, they want our help. But imagine going to, or even being born into a country where that's not the case, where you're completely unable to practice whatever you believe, where you have no form of public worship, and where you're persecuted or even killed for what you believe. Now let me introduce you to Somalia. The purpose of this speech is to inform you about the persecuted church in Somalia. As the body of Christ, we have different parts, and they are more on the persecuted side of those parts. They, before they became a Christian, had to really count the cost as Jesus told us to do. And it's important for us to be aware of what persecution looks like around the world. Even though there are many aspects to and varieties of persecution in Somalia, today I will be discussing the government and extremist groups shutting down all public forms of worship, the fear that exists within the underground churches, and how Christians are being killed as soon as they're found out. I'd like to begin with the government shutting down all the churches. The government promises religious freedom to the people, but the extremist groups keep that from being a reality. In the past 70 years, there was one place of worship, and it was only open for 40 of those years. Monica Zorita de la Morena on the Catholic News Agency said that for 40 years there was one place of worship, averaging about 10 people per mass service. And even though it had very limited influence, it was extremely dangerous for them to go. Their lives were in danger just for sitting in the church. But despite the very limited influence, they didn't go out, they didn't evangelize, but it was shut down by the government for the past 30 years. Tony Hanulo of Religion News wrote that in August 2017, the only remaining church among the Somalians closed a few days after it opened temporarily. So it was closed for 30 years, open for about 5 days, and then the government shut it down again because the Minister of Religious Affairs said it caused too much unnecessary division within the country. So because there were no places for worship to happen publicly, the church was forced to go underground. They meet in underground churches, which is usually in a house, to worship. They meet as a body, which isn't necessary, but as communion, as a body of believers, we're supposed to meet together. So in order to do this, Tony Anula said that out of fear of persecution, they meet in small one-bedroom houses to praise Jesus. And even though it's on a lot more quiet and secret scale, they meet to praise and sing and testify the good news of Jesus. Pastor John, who was a Kenyan contractor who works among the Somalians, said, "It is very dangerous for anyone to identify you as a Christian in this country. You will, in fact, be counting your days on earth." But he continues recording in the religious news that they meet and they trust Jesus to protect them. They worship in fear of getting caught, because if the church is found out, the church will be destroyed along with all the people in it. So life as a Christian in Somalia begins with the knowledge that your life will likely end because of it. Lindy Lowry, in 11 Christians Killed Every Day for Their Decision to Follow Jesus, writes that Christians, especially with a Muslim background, are killed on the spot if they're discovered. In Secret Church this past year, we picked one people group to talk about, and it was the Somalians. We chose to pray for them. So all night, in between our lessons, we were praying for the people, praying for their perseverance, and there were these two people who came on to speak about what was happening in Somalia, and they were from Somalia, so their faces were covered, their voices were changed for security issues. All phones and recording devices had to be put up, and this man told us, he said, "I'm basically offering up my life by offering to speak to you." So by telling us what was going on and the certain persecutions that he was facing, he was giving up his life. And even if he didn't die from that, he was expecting to die for his faith alone. The terrorist groups also want to eradicate Christianity altogether. Al-Shabaab, which is one terrorist group, expressed its desire to eradicate Christians from the country. And Open Doors, the website, can't go into specific details on what the persecution looks like due to security issues, but they did say that becoming a Christian is seen as a betrayal to your family, your friends, your country, and even though your friends and your family are usually people you can confide in and they accept you no matter what, that's not the case in Somalia. If you're found out, your family might be the one to kill you. So it leads to death most likely, and if not, it's severe persecution and very limited access to practice what you believe. So to conclude, I would like to remind you that this speech was an informative speech on the persecuted church in Somalia. Today we discussed that the government has shut down all public forms of worship, that the people are forced to practice their beliefs underground, and that if they're found out, that they are often killed on the spot. I would just like to leave you with this, that we are the body, and as the body, we should care for all the parts. We might not have to give up anything to become a Christian. It might be widely accepted where we are, but we shouldn't take that for granted, because all over the world there are people persecuted for their faith.